Yo guys, what is going on? Got a BT6 tier list for you guys. Just talking about all the decks that will potentially may or may not be meta in the BT6 format for us American players. This is still a ways away. I believe at the beginning of November is when we actually get our pre-release. But for Latin America and Europe, the official release I believe is pretty soon, next week I think. So in spirit of that, let's go ahead and just talk about some of the decks, some of the prominent decks out of the past couple of sets and how they will fare against the BT6 meta. Guys, I will have this tier maker in the list below, so if you'd like to make your own tier list, share it with your friends, whatever, go ahead and try it, be my guest. By the way, I did not make this. don't give me credit for that. I just found it on tier list maker. But yeah, if you disagree with any of my choices in this video, which you probably will, go ahead and let me know down in the comments what you think of my list. What would you change? And yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it. So for starters, we got the first deck here, one of my favorites, Greymon Tribal, represented by BT1 War Greymon here. This deck has a lot of things going for it, and I think it's actually pretty decent against some of the meta decks. Greymon cards only get more support with the new Tai Kamiya, with the new Agumon, especially with Bond of Courage. This deck can be pretty solid, so especially because you've got so many removal cards like Victory Greymon, Blitz Greymon, you've got every Omnimon under the sun that you can use to combat the meta. I would probably put this at like a tier 1.5. I definitely don't think it's one of the best decks, but I do think it can compete, especially if you guys have been following my channel for the last couple of formats. I think this deck actually does have some decent strategies, especially with stuff like Nokia and things like that. But yeah. So likewise, we got Guruman Tribal here. Now this deck, not nearly as good as the Greymon deck. Not only because, you know, it's wolves versus like a bunch of dragons, right? Of course, Guruman is not nearly as cool in my opinion. But the Guruman cards like just don't do nearly as much. So you see BT1 Metal Guruman here. He's like okay. He was pretty okay in like set 1.0. But outside of that, he doesn't really see play. And a lot of the other Guruman cards are a little bit more niche. BT5 Metal Guruman, the one that has that bounce effect for like on deletion Digimon, so that one's okay. But a lot of the other cards, like you're basically just playing Omnimon Turbo, but like Red just does that better. It's not really aggressive, it's not really control-y. I don't really know what this deck wants to do. I guess attack a bunch of times and like be and, you know, like unsuspend your Digimon, but I honestly would put this at like a tier like a tier 3 deck. Like it's not super good, but you do have access to Omnimon, so I don't know if I like for this list, Rogue, like anything I put in Rogue is like pretty much like I think is like unplayable at tournaments, or like maybe not unplayable, I don't know if that's the right word, but decks that are just like not nearly like good enough to contend with the meta. So then next we got Shine Greymon here, another one of my absolute favorite decks. This guy was really prominent in the 1.5 meta. Shine Greymon I still think is a really powerful boss monster. Like this guy just being able to clear boards dependent on how many yellow tamers you have is really fantastic. The problem is he's just outpaced by so many other decks like Lord Nymon and basically every other yellow deck, Yellow War Greymon. Like those decks are just able to be more aggressive and more control-y than Shine Greymon much more quickly, because Shine Greymon requires you to set up your tamers beforehand. It's a little bit less consistent as well, even though you're playing something like TK, which definitely helps. A lot of times you have to cut on your monster count, so Shine Greymon decks often play like 12 rookies and like 10 champions, stuff like that, just because you have to make room for like playing like anywhere between like 10 to 12 tamers. So because of those reasons, just because it's a little bit slower paced, I would probably put this in like tier 2. Like I think because it is a yellow deck, you can play cards like Valdrarm and Pulsemon and Starmon. You have access to a lot of really great cards, but I don't think it's quite good enough to like take a tournament. Like, I mean, I would definitely love someone to prove me wrong, but I just don't think Shine Greymon is going to do too hot in the BT6 meta. Now BT7 meta, that's entirely different animal. All right, we'll get to that soon enough. But anyways, for now, Shine Greymon is going to go into tier 2. For the next deck, we got Ragnalordmon, another fan favorite deck, I think, just because you get to one stack and make a really powerful boss monster with maybe layers of protection or ability to one punch your opponent if you're playing the red version version or control the board a little bit if you're playing the black version. I don't really think Ragnarlordmon gets any, like, it gets like indirect support. There's a couple of ultimates in BT6 that are like red black mixed, so there's a potential to make it more of a mixed deck. I think that's pretty cool. But I don't think this Digimon himself is like enough to deal with a lot of other problematic cards in the meta. Stuff like 3 Musketeers can just run circles around this deck because one card from them is just able to like completely delete, like destroy Ragnarlordmon. Like hit them with a Gaia Force, hit them with like a Heavy Bullet Showering, or just tons of other cards, not even just 3 Musketeer option cards, but stuff like Genkumon like can get rid of this. Stuff like Chaosmon Valor Arm can easily get rid of this. So there's just so many other counters in the meta. And again, this is another deck similar to Shine Greymon that requires a lot of setup, so I just think it's much more like slow than a lot of the other decks, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in like tier 3 status, just because very slow deck, doesn't have removal or control. You're just basically like one stacking, but then it doesn't have the advantage of like the Shoutmon deck that can one stack but just like hit your opponent really quickly, because the Blitz mechanic like Ragnarlord I just don't think is that prominent. Next we got Imperial German. Imperial German has like proved a lot of people wrong over the past couple of formats. Like I honestly did not think Imperial German would be able to contend with the BT5 meta with stuff like Lord Nymon, Chaos, Galmont, Omnimon, Zwart Defeat, all those cards, just because I mean, again, all it does is really rush at your security, but if you want to rush at your security, Rookie Rush has a lot of things going for it that Imperial German does not. However, because you can tech in cards like Nidhoggmon, you've got access to Hammer Spark. Davis Moltomia is a fantastic tamer that can, you know, net you a +2, and then you've got stuff like Pile German, and the Pile German Imperial German combo lets you hit for like 3 security, and then if you got Omnimon on top of that, I think it can be pretty sweet, especially if you're not really used to playing around it. I would put Imperial German in like a tier 1.5 probably. Like it's definitely not like super meta, but I think piloted by the correct person, it could definitely top a tournament or two. Like I do think Imperial German is still really solid, especially going forward into the EX1 set and BT7 set. I think, and then the new starter deck, of course, I think this deck gets much more powerful. So yeah, that's Imperial German. And the next we got like Seriesmon, I guess, or just like the Digisorption mechanic in general. And now, while this deck was like really good early on in this game's history, because the Digisorption mechanic is just absolutely crazy. Okay, the issue is like you don't need to play Seriesmon to take advantage of the Digisorption mechanic, because Blossomon and Argamon level 5 are still really powerful cards. Seriesmon is a really cool card because you can just like control the board with Seriesmon and like suspend your opponent's Digimon, like attack over them, whatever. But I honestly just think like it's a victim of, it doesn't do anything by itself, and like there's way more other better green level 6s. Now, green does not actually get that much support in BT6, so maybe there is still room for Seriesmon, but I think Raffleshimon, Grand Kuwagamon, heck, even like the new Hercules Kabuterimon promo, like I think those would all see more play than something like Seriesmon. So I think I'm definitely gonna put this in like the rogue category. Like I haven't seen anyone play a Seriesmon deck since like 1.5. So anyway, so that's my opinion on green. Next, we got black blockers here represented by Craniumon. Now, black has kind of been on a comeback. If you've been paying attention to the BT5 meta, black has often been considered to be like the worst color, but the like Omnimon's Zwart Defeat turbo deck that just plays a bunch of vanillas and then goes into Omnimon's Zwart Defeat, teching in maybe stuff like Craniumon. I think black blockers definitely does have its place, and then especially we've seen success with cards like Mechanorimon against Rookie Rush and against lots of other strategies that are just like very powerful. A lot of decks cannot out 12,000-13,000 blockers. So I don't think it is like amazing, but I definitely don't think it's like terrible. I would probably put like black blockers in like a tier 3. And now as far as like the other black decks like Genkumon and like the Reboot deck with like I said with Sword Defeat and stuff, that I would definitely put higher on this list. But for now we're gonna put black blockers, that kind of slow strategy, in tier 3. So now next we got Mastermind. Mastermind is a card that just continuously gets better with time, especially in BT6 when we've got access to cards like Dynasmon and Mimicmon, I believe, is that like yellow level 4, and then just lots of other cards that make her so good. And then don't even get me started on the new Mastermind from the starter deck. I'll save that for another list. But Mastermind, I think, as its own functioning deck, I'm not sure how powerful she would be. I think splashed in things like Dynasmon, splashed in things like Lord Nymon, Mastermind as a card is really, really good. But any Mastermind focused deck, I think, does also need to play one of the other yellow boss monsters, or even stuff like yellow War Greymon. So I would probably put Mastermind at like a tier like 1.5, just because it's such a versatile card, and because the deck doesn't really have an identity of itself. I feel like you can play in purple decks, you can play in yellow decks, but basically every like Mastermind deck is good just because she's such a generic card and able to be played in so many strategies. Okay, so now we got Lilith Loop. Okay, so Lilith Loop is a very interesting deck in that it takes quite a lot of setup, but when it gets going, it is absolutely nuts and has so many combos. In BT6 specifically, we've seen in BT5 in action a little bit. In BT6 specifically, you get access to cards that make this loop even better and more explosive. Stuff like Tidamon and Genkumon promote, and all those cards, like the support cards for purple, make this deck so powerful. Your basic strategy is to go into Lilithmon, abuse Jack Raid, get your trash really big, just gain a bunch of memory. Like if you activate one Jack Raid and you've got 10 cards in trash and Lilithmon on the field, that is a +3 memory just from that interaction. Then you go into Mega Digimon Fusion, Zwart effect, bring back 2 ultimates, swing, add back the Lilithmon again, add back the Jack Raid, and then gain like another 3 or 4, whatever. It's so crazy, especially because now you've got Genkumon promote, who's got Rush, so you can bring him back and then attach like I think the regular Genkumon, and then you gain like a memory or something like that, and then it's just really crazy because then you can attack and then just keep looping it really consistently. So I think I would put Lilith Loop at a tier 1 status. I think that deck is really crazy, especially because of all the new purple support cards we're getting that support like trashing cards from your hand and like, stuff like that, just make it very viable. I definitely think, if anything, it would be like maybe on the lower end of tier 1, just because it's like a very bricky sometimes. Like, I think you do have to run a lot of consistency cards, but stuff like purple memory boost that we're getting in the new starter decks definitely does help that out. Now, the next card represented by D Brigade is not actually like pure D Brigade. Pure D Brigade doesn't even deserve to belong in like Rogue. I would put it like sub Rogue. Like, that deck is terrible. Okay, but D Brigade Rookie Rush with Commandramons, you're playing Starmons, Pulsemons, Spiral Masquerade. This is a deck that is really scary. Me and my friends have been testing out a little bit. Or like one of my friends specifically has been testing out, and he's been like letting me know how crazy this deck is. Won locals with it, and we've seen it take a couple of other tournaments somewhat recently, and I think this deck is like really insane. And this deck is really insane because you're playing so many Commandramons. You just play it like a typical Rookie Rush deck, but then you can just drop Darkdramon as your boss monster for a 3 cost, put all your rookies back, so then you'll be guaranteed to draw more next turn. You'll be able to fill up your hand again, and then you've got access to cards like Zwart Defeat, Omnimon Alter, as you name it, Black has got it. They have access to so many powerful level 7, so I think Darkdramon as a like kind of boss monster in that Rookie Rush deck is a really cool strategy, and I think it's actually really scary. I don't know if I would put it like tier 1. I don't know if it'll be the best deck, but it's definitely a powerful deck. Okay, so just be aware, when I am putting this Darkdramon in 1.5, I'm not talking about D Brigade. I'm talking about D Brigade Rookie Rush. And even then, I could see the argument for like tier 2, but when it high rolls, that deck is scary. Alright. Now, we got Devon. There's like no need for discussion. This card belongs in Rogue. This card is not... I mean, I wish it was good. It can be cool sometimes, like the effect to trash security cards, in theory, is a really good effect, right? Because there's so many, security control and Musketeer decks running around, like, this card is just, like, good because it can get rid of those. However, the deck itself, like, because you have to play so many Devimon names, it really limits, like, what other techs you can put in it, or what, like, level 7s or, like, other powerful, like, option cards or whatever you can put in it. and it just makes it like not good, because like your win condition is just getting done Devimon on the field and like not evolving him, because you want him to get an on deletion effect and you want him to interrupt your opponent by trashing their security. But I just don't think it's like that viable in the VT6 meta. So anyways, now we got Shoutmon red. So we got the Blitz deck, Shoutmon D-Cross, Blitz, Omnimon, Zeke, Greymon, all those cards. The Blitz mechanic is just crazy. We get a little bit more support in BT6. There's a new Shoutmon. There's a Shuramon as well. I don't know if the deck will play that, but it's another card with Blitz. So there's lots of cards with that support this deck, and it's just really, really nice because it, is a one-stack deck, so you can just build up in breeding, be safe for a little while, play your Tamer's option cards, Red Memory Boost, stuff like that. Bring it out when you're ready to fight, and then go into your Zeke Greymon, go into your Omni Shoutmon, go into your Shoutmon D-Cross, which can just control the board really well, blow up 2 things with level with 5,000 or lower. I mean, I say 2, but it's usually 1 or 2, just because it's based on the number of Zeke Greymon, Omni Shoutmons you have on his materials. And then you've got stuff like Omnimon and Omnimon X that you can just go into and then just control the board and beat over your opponent's Digimon. It's a really, really cool deck that combines control aspect as well as just complete aggressiveness. So I would definitely put Shoutmon in tier 1. I think this is a really solid deck. Has a lot of good matchups. And then, of course, you can play stuff like Tactical Plan, which is really, really good in the BT6 meta. I don't even have to explain. Like, that card's crazy against certain decks. Now, we've got basically the undisputed best deck of the BT5 meta. That is Lord Nymon. Now, Lord Nymon does get a couple of cool new tricks to play with. You got stuff like Dynasmon, you got stuff like Tapermon, Mistymon, lots of other cards that you might see people teching in, but I think the basic strategy of Lord Nymon does not really change. You could take your BT5 Lord Nymon and still seek success in the BT6 format, just because Lord Nymon is such a crazy card. You've got stuff like Chaosmon, Valderon, you can tech in the Mastermons, play stuff like Zwart Defeat, and then you've got access to cards like Blinding Ray and Starmons and Pulsemons, and the cards that are just so powerful, give you so much value. I definitely still think Lord Nymon is a tier 1 deck. I still think that is going to be one of the best decks in the meta. It is just so powerful, and we know the reasons why, because it is so good at controlling the board state and then just making these really big plays and making it very hard for your opponent to out their board. Now, we've got green as the next deck. This is more of like Digiburst green, I guess, Refleshimon, and more of the standard green that we're used to, stuff like Refleshimon, stuff like Nidhoggmon. I still think Nidhoggmon is an absolute blowout card. I still think Refleshimon is a really good card. You got stuff like Mimi that can just help you turbo through your deck really, really quickly, and because of those reasons, like, I still would say this is at least a tier 1.5 deck. I'm going to put it as a tier 1 deck just because this deck is like able to counter a lot of stuff in the meta. I still think it's really good. Now, the only downside is, of course, you can brick sometimes. It doesn't have much removal. You do kind of have to just build into your level 6s to do anything, but you get a lot of value out of stuff like in Potential Discovered, the Digisorption Digimon, stuff like that. So then we've got Reboot Black. We got Black Metal Guruman as representative of that, and we've seen this deck take a lot of tournament spots in recent history. So because Black Metal Guruman is a really solid card, being able to trash like your opponent's security cards if there's option cards in it is always really nice. So I think this card is still going to see some play maybe in the BT6 meta just because of that ability. But then, of course, has a control aspect. You can go into stuff like Zwart Defeat, get rid of their Tamers, and I think this deck will still definitely be good. Not sure about tier 1, but I would probably put it as a 1.5 just because you are getting lots of support in BT6, so you can also tech in things like Genkumon and Alphamon and stuff like that we'll talk about a little bit later, but I would say that, like, this deck, represented by Metal Guruman, the Metal Guruman, like, Omnimon, Zwart Defeat, vanilla, like, black deck, I would say that's still probably a 1.5 deck right there. So then we got Chaos Galmont. Chaos Galmont is one of my favorite purple decks. I really, really like it. It has such a good matchup against, like, just rogue decks and, like, any deck that needs to build into their level 5 and 6 Digimon, because you get to snipe level 5s. It's so powerful. Then you can get value off of stuff like Guillemon gaining back the memory, putting you to 0 a lot of the times, and then, of course, cards like War Growlmon are just so powerful. War Growlmon is like I would say that's like the best purple level 5 like in the game. That card is so fantastic, being able to let you swing multiple times and then trigger your Chaos Galmon's effect by like deleting something like a Guilmon. You gain a memory, bring the Guilmon back, unsuspend him. It's just so powerful, and has a lot of decent matchups. Now again, the only thing is that it is a little bit slow, requires some setup. You basically can't use Chaos Galmon by himself. Ideally you would like to have the Black War Gromon with all of your materials, and that's another caveat. You need all of the materials. You need 3 underneath him, or you need like some other Digimon that you're willing to sacrifice already on the field. So because of those reasons, I probably put it at like a 1.5. I do think it has some decent matchups, but I do think it's a little bit slow, a little bit bricky, not necessarily the best version of purple, but it is still quite solid. Now, Armageddon or Diaboromon, the unidentified unknown Digimon, that black deck, a fan favorite deck for sure. Really fun deck, revolves around Diaboromon, getting mount, spawning a bunch of tokens, getting value off of that, drawing cards off of your Caramon, gaining memory off your Kurisarimon. You can make some really crazy plays, and the fact that Armageddon is a hard counter to basically every other deck's like level 7 boss monsters. He outs Millenniumon and Omnimon, Chaosmon, Valderon, regular Chaosmon, everything with an on Digivolution effect, which, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure that, like, is every other level 7 in the game. Like, that has non-Digivolution effects. Those effects just do not activate. And then in addition to that, he's a 15,000 Digimon he can play from your hand for a 3 cost. He has got Rush. So it's just really crazy. Lots of people don't expect Armageddon to hit the field, but I think he's a pretty solid option. The only thing holding back the deck is the consistency, the fact that you basically need to have Diaboromon and Arata or a way to spawn a token, and then you need to have Armageddon because you don't really want to Digivolve him because he's got Rush, so you want to take advantage of that. But there's lots of issues with this deck, but then of course you've got the upside that you can run stuff like Catastrophe Cannon and Ultimate Flare, which is a really powerful card in the BT5 meta. So I would probably put this at like tier 2. Like, it's definitely not terrible, but I'm not sure, like, you might see a Diaboromon sneak in like in top cut every now and then, but I definitely don't think it's like a fantastic deck. Okay, and then next we've got Zwart Defeat or just Zwart Defeat Turbo. You could run in black or just purple. I think this deck is really solid, being able to run it, in either colors. We've seen success with the black deck. I've seen a couple of lists playing like basically like purple Omnimon Zwart Turbo, and you're also playing things like X Antibody to just help that because you're playing Zwart Defeat. And Zwart Defeat is just a really fantastic card in many ways because he's got an amazing security effect, he's got an amazing on-deletion effect as well as on-evolve effect. I would probably put this in like a 1.5 setting. I think Zwart Defeat Turbo decks are still going to be really powerful. But yeah, so then next we've got what I think is going to be the hands down best deck in the format. I'm not even going to waste any time. Jessamon definitely belongs in tier 1. I'll put him over here because I think this is going to be the 100% the best deck for a couple of reasons. Because it's got so much value. You can get so much value out of like just 1 or 2 cards. Jessamon himself can swing, bring out a Sistermon, gain you memory, or draw you a card, and then if you got the correct cards underneath him, he can blow something up, he can unsuspend himself, use his effect again, he's got Piercing, goes to like 1,000,000 DP. Jessamon just does everything you want in a boss monster. You can play him aggressively, you can play him in a control manner, you can OTK, you can do so many things, you can control the board to get rid of your opponent's Digimon. It's just so ridiculous, and of course, it's a red deck, so you can tech in stuff like Tactical Plan, so any other deck that's playing option cards that potentially out him with like the Musketeer option cards or stuff like that, you can just play around, and I think Jessamon is just so disgusting because of the support cards that he's had, because of the Sistermons. The Sistermons are so good, and then next set you get the Sistermon Awaken, and then of course like the whole Huckmon evolution line is just so crazy. You've got a Searcher, you've got a dude who deletes 5,000 or lower, you got something that lets him unsuspend. It's just ridiculous. I think Jessamon's absolutely fantastic. Now, we've got Agumon, Bond of Courage, or Bond of Bravery, as it was translated in English. But this deck, I think, just any deck that turbos into him, I've seen a lot of builds play, you're basically playing like all Agumons and then Tamers and option cards, and you're playing it like a security deck where you're playing like Atomic Blaster and Gaia Force and stuff like that, and then you're just trying to cycle through your deck and with like stuff like Red Memory Boost, and then just wait to outstall your opponent and then like get rid of their stuff, and then finally go into Bond of Bravery and then just go ham at their security and take out like 3 cards and kill a Digimon in the process of that. But I think this card is really, really fantastic. I would definitely put this at a tier 1 status. Like both the Bonds I think are absolutely ridiculous. This guy is definitely my favorite of the two, but I think Gabumon is also insane. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Now we got a Zulongmon, or basically like Hexablau, but you're teching in a Zulongmon as well. The Source Strip deck, the blue deck that basically revolves around getting your opponent's Digimon like without sources. I think this deck is pretty solid. Now, prior to BT6, you had just had Hexablau. That deck was decent, but it just wasn't enough to deal with the hard meta threats that were running around in BT5. However, with stuff like a Zulongmon, now you can have the potential to OTK. You can control the board a little bit, and when you're ready to push for game, you can just drop in a Zulongmon, gain a bunch of memory, strip some sources, and then hit them for like a million security checks, and then you can unsuspend them and do crazy shenanigans like that. So I would probably put a Zulongmon / Hexablau in like a 1.5 setting. I think it will be pretty decent just because now you have a game ender in the form of a Zulongmon. Now, we are reaching Gabumon Bond of Friendship. This is an easy tier 1. This deck is so ridiculous. Basically, how you run this deck is you're playing all Gabumons, but then you're also playing the Promo Lobomon and Ancient Garurumon, being able to Digivolve on up from like a rookie into your level 6 and 7 very quickly is just so ridiculous. You don't care if your guys die at the end. You don't care if they go back to the bottom of the deck. You're just trying to rush your opponent's security with as little memory as possible. So a really common play is like you'll bring out your rookie, you'll be at 3 memory, go into Promo Lobomon for 2, Digivolve, draw card, and then go into Ancient Garurumon for 1. You're still at 0. You'll swing like twice with Ancient Garurumon. Or you could even like swing once and then Digivolve into Bond of Friendship, and then like swing like 3 more times if you've got the appropriate Gabumon underneath them, because then you play stuff like Mega Digimon Fusion, or you play stuff like Hammer Spark and a Blue Memory Boost to put you up to like 6, 7, 8 memory a turn. So it's just really, really crazy. This deck does not care about what your opponent's doing. You're just basically trying to build up your back row by playing a bunch of option cards and tamers, and then when you're good and ready, you'll just bring out a rookie and then he'll warp straight into a level 7 and annihilate your opponent. So I think this deck is really, really powerful, really good. And then we've got stuff like Dynasmon. So Dynasmon as a deck I think will be pretty cool, just because Dynasmon as a card is really, really powerful, being able to trash a card, search like any number of Digimon, I think it's like 2 Digimon from like your top 5 or top 6 or something, and then you get to recovery. Basically he'll keep you at 3, so you'll recover +1 anytime you lose a security and you're like 3 or lower. So that is just so powerful, especially pair it with something like Kari Kamiya, the purple one, where then when you lose a security you get to suspend her. So there's actually kind of like a mini lock with Kari and Dynasmon, where you can just like your opponent swings once and then like you'll recover and then you'll suspend like 3 Karis to like gain 3 memory and like end their turn. So that, I think that's really cool. I'm not sure like how the pure version will do, but I would probably put this in like a tier 2. Dynasmon himself I would say is like a tier 1 or like tier 1.5 card, but like as a pure deck I don't know how much it'll do against like just the better yellow strategies like Lord Nymon and stuff that has like actual removal. Okay, now Ancient Troymon or Hybrid Green. I think Hybrid Green gets really, really powerful in set 7, but until then we're stuck with basically just having 3 hybrid cards. You got Ancient Troymon, you got Arbormon, and then Petal German. I definitely don't think this deck is good, especially because you've got like better hybrid decks like the Ancient Guruman, Ancient Greymon. Like if you want to run those in a pure version, that's like literally just better because they have so many more support cards. I don't think Ancient Troymon is like even that like great of a card, so I'd probably put this at Rogue. I don't think it's going to see like a whole lot of play. I could definitely be wrong, but at least until set 7 where you get like way more green hybrid support, I don't think Ancient Troymon is going to do like anything. Now, Genkumon. I think black players, it is time to rise up. I literally think like Genkumon, Alphamon, all the other black support in this set makes these cards like actually good. It makes this color very, very viable. I think Genkumon is an absolutely crazy card. Basically, what he does is on Digivolve, you get to delete something or all your Digimon with the lowest play cost. So if your opponent's only got one Digimon on the field, if they got one level 6, one level 7 Digimon, it'll just kill it on Evolve. I think that's crazy. There's so many situations where, like, if your opponent doesn't have a weak Digimon on the field, or they got multiple Digimon with the same name, or multiple Digimon with the same play cost, I think this card can, like, be actually insane. This might be a little bit daring, but I think I'm gonna put Genkumon in, like, a tier 1. It might be a little bit lower than that, but I legit think this card is, like, really scary. And like I said before, we've seen success with certain black decks. Like, you can run it in a certain way, and it'll be good. And because of all the other support cards, I think this deck will legitimately be good. Now, Tidamon Purple. I think the pure Tidamon build, if you're not playing Lilithmon, I would say this is probably like a 1.5 deck. Tidamon Purple, like, by himself, if like I said, if you're not playing Lilithmon, he is really good. You get to bring back something from the trash and then potentially gain some memory, and, you know, off of stuff like Genkumon. And he's got, like, security attack +1 if you, like, trash something. So he's a really, really powerful boss monster. There are a lot of good support cards. I legitimately think, though, like, a lot of the other support cards are just, like, better than Tidamon himself. But there are definitely some cool things you can do with the strategy. But I think the most explosive way to run the deck would be the Lilithmon version. Now we've got EOSmon. EOSmon is a really, really cool card, and a really, really cool deck. It's like the first truly white deck that we can play in the Digimon TCG. Before this, white hasn't, like, really been its own, like, color or, like, deck, but we've seen, like, the white tamers and white option cards and stuff. But now we've got lots of white Digimon as well. So EOSmon is basically, you're just spamming the field, and then you go into your EOSmon level 6. You can get rid of a Digimon, and then you've got lots of like, spam ability, lots of value off of stuff like Manoa. You can search stuff off of Morphmon, and you've got, like, some cool option cards as well. I don't think, just because it does take a while to get set up, and, like, even its ceiling is, like, not super high because you don't have access to any level 7s because EOSmon is a white level 6. You've got access to Armageddonmon. I'll say that. You can definitely tech in an Armageddonmon, but he doesn't do anything on Evolve, and you're not playing him from hand, and so the rush thing isn't relevant. So I don't know. I'm on the fence of EOSmon. I definitely do think it's good, but I wouldn't say it's, like, fantastic. I don't know. I personally, I think I would put EOSmon in, like, tier 2, but feel free to prove me wrong. Feel free to disagree. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Now, Alphamon. Oh my goodness. Again, Alphamon is, the reckoning is here, black players. Alphamon is a fantastic card. In security, he gets to, you get to add him to your hand, and then you also get to prevent, I think it's up to 12 Digimon on, like, on your opponent's side of the field. So basically, your opponent's whole side of the field is, like, not attacking for, like, the rest of the turn. So that's fantastic. And then, of course, when you battle with him, you get to just gain 2 memory at the end of the, like, battle. Like, he does have the effect where you can pay memory to, like, boost his DP. I think that's a little bit less relevant. It is definitely good, though. It's a nice tool to have, but I think most people will, like, low-key, like, just try to risk it with Alphamon, swing it security or whatever, and then just want to gain back that 2 memory, because a really cool play you can maybe do is, okay, let's say I'm at 3, bring out your level 5, go into Alphamon, swing, put yourself to 2, and then you go into Sword Defeat, and your opponent's at 1, and then you kill their tamer, then they're locked at 1, you got to defeat on the field. So I think there are really, really cool combos you can do with Alphamon. I would probably put this in tier 1 alongside with Genkumon. Again, this might be a little bit daring. I'd probably put these two together, because I think most decks are going to be playing them together. But now, we've got another really, really crazy deck coming out of BT6. We got 3 Musketeers, or 3 Musketeers security controlled, however you want to call it. I don't think people will run this in a traditional deck sense where you're, like, building up into your, like, Gundramon and Magna Kidmon. I think that version's, like, not as good, but what I'm talking about is, like, the, like, 4 Belle Star version. Like, you're just, like, not even playing the others, really. I've seen some lists play Gundramon where you just hard play him, but, like, basically, you're playing security control, but just, like, lots of 7 cost option cards, and then you're playing, like, 4 Belle Starman. I think that deck is, like, really insane, because you've got so many toolboxy cards that can just do things in so many different situations. You got Happy Bullet Showering, Fly Bullet, Gewalt Schwarmer is an absolute blowout card, and of course you can bypass the color restriction with the, like, the 3 Musketeer Digimon. So I think this deck is for sure tier 1. I think we're going to see a lot of people play it. I think Belle Starman is an absolute crazy card. Late game you can just play it for, like, a 2-3 cost. I've even seen some people like play it for a 0 cost sometimes. sometimes. It's actually insane. Add back a 7-cost option card, play your Nail Bones, play your Gale whatever. It's just so crazy. And then go into something like a Millenniumon or his Word Defeat or something after that. I just think I think this deck's gonna be insane. And then we got Green OTK. The Green OTK version, I think I would also probably put in tier 1, like I said, just because most lists aren't just running like Genkumon by himself. It's usually like Refleshimon with like Genkumon. Like, look, most lists of Green are running like 3 or 4 different level 6s, just because there's so many other, like, there's so many good ones, and you like don't really max out on any single one of them. I would probably put this in tier 1, but again, I don't think, like, I'll put these green decks in like low tier 1. Like, let's put these cards up here. I would put those low tier 1 for sure. But I still do think they're viable. Like, I definitely still think green as a color is really good. We got Purple Metal Guruman. Unfortunately, I would probably put this in like tier 3. I think Purple Metal Guruman and Plutomon are just like not that good, and unfortunately, just because option cards, if like option cards in a traditional deck versus like option cards in a security control deck, I'd rather just play security control deck than like get the like feeling of like, okay, Metal Guruman has a really cool effect. You can play like double Trump Sword in a turn, or like double like Fly Bullet or something. It's really powerful, but it just requires a lot of setup, and it's a little bit slow, and I don't know, it just guaranteeing yourself option cards in hand also, like, he relies on that, because if you got Metal Guruman but no option cards, he doesn't do anything. So for that reason, I will put him in tier 3. Now we've got Yellow Green Rookie Rush. Oh my god, this deck is so disgusting. Spiral Masquerade, like, legit, I hate that card so much. I might have to do like a separate discussion on like a ban list or something, but like that card like actually might need to go to like 1. But regardless, yellow green Rookie Rush is just like so powerful because you get so much value out of cards like Pulsemon, Starmons. You got Falcomon, who's a 5,000 level 3. You've got, and then you're playing the other green 5,000 level 3s, and then you can play stuff like Needle Spray, Blinding Ray. Just so many crazy tools at your disposal just to help you. Like, by turn 3, you're winning that game unless your opponent immediately answers your rookies. Like, unless they're playing like Tactimon or like Ultimate Flare or, you know, stuff like that, they're gonna have a hard time dealing with Yellow Green Rookie Rush. I'd probably put this at, I'd probably put it at 1.5, just because I think the other decks, like, because the cards like Gale, because stuff like a Bond of Friendship and like Jesmon, because those cards exist now, I think Rookie Rush will get knocked down a peg, and I'll put it at 1.5 for now. But I still definitely do think that's a deck we need to respect, and that's a deck that can do a lot of stuff. And then now we got Purple Crescendon, or I guess like Purple Nokia, or whatever you want to call it, Purple OTK. I definitely don't think this deck is good. I'll put this at Rogue. Purple Crest Guruman is like basically never seen success in the meta. And then now, lastly, we've got, funny enough, the Galmont and All Force decks. Now, with the new starter decks, do these decks come out of obscurity and actually become good? I'm gonna say no. I honestly, like, even with all the new support, there's definitely really good cards in the starter deck. Stuff like Hordramon, Greymon, and even Galmont to an extent. I think you'll see him teched in like maybe a Jesmon deck or like some other red decks. But I think as full decks, like, All Force like hit his prime in like 1.5, and like Galmon, unfortunately, like, still does not do enough by itself. I would probably put these decks at like tier 3. Like, these decks, unfortunately, just don't really have too much going for them. Their boss monsters don't do too much, and you just have like not a lot of support versus like a lot of the other decks like Jesmon and Lord Nymon and you know, stuff like that. I do think they're really fun decks, but I don't think you'll see them like the pure versions at least winning a tournament anytime soon. But guys, that is the list. That is my tier list. So go ahead and let me know down in the comments what you think of the list. Is it complete garbage? Is it an amazing list? Let me know what you disagree with, and let me know what you agree with. What decks do you think I maybe glossed over, didn't talk about enough, or didn't talk about at all? Let me know down in the comments. But that's going to be it for this tier list. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.